And then I was like, why not just like make movie stories in general? They're more concise, they're more visually oriented, and they're way more compact, and you don't have to write like novellas and stories. And I'm the kind of guy that gets distracted easily. I have so many stories I want to do. Like sometimes the ideas come one after the other. And then when they say, oh, you got to pump out the ideas, like as a screenwriter, that's like ideal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's something about like the skill. It's kind of a real skill of like breaking a story. Like just, you have a concept. Obviously, there's a skill involved in like refining an idea or, say developing a log line or that kind of stuff. But like Connor has just a tremendous skill to turn just a basic concept or log line into, well, so what would that look like as a movie? So what would be most of the act two scenes? What would that, he can kind of really, if it's a strong log line, I mean, for me, it used to take me like maybe, I don't know. I mean, there was like log lines or something I struggled with for like a month or 2 months trying to figure out like, how could I make this into a story, right? How can I outline it? And he's just done it so much. Like when you're working as a screenwriter, you're just to be considered for writing assignments, you're like quickly figuring out a story, right? Like you're actually writing out what are all the beats, what is this going to look like as a movie, and like creating a document that's a couple pages that you're sending to the producer for free, just saying, hey, if you hire me, this is what I would do. And he's just done so many of these. It's like most screenwriters that I know that are working, like getting writing assignments, they have to do like 40 or 50 of them every year just to like be considered for these gigs. And like I would bring something to Connor, like, a project in the writer's lab or something, and he'll just figure it out in like 3 minutes. Like, okay, I spent a month working on this and you figured it out in 3 minutes, It's like, it's definitely.
It's I feel like what Connor really possesses is something that I also find interesting. There's a lot of like YouTube videos dissecting fiction and like characters and like themes, and I feel like he has a really good grasp on that. And I feel like some of these skills are sort of innate with writers as well. Like we're always compelled to like archetypes and like sort of like the stories we knew, but there's always some part of like an innate sense of storytelling, right? Like not everyone is always as interested in like telling stories as they are in like kind of watching them, I guess.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, uh,
Sorry, I might have missed some of that. I wanted to know how far along were you on your on the thing you're working on, Tom?
Well, I have two project. Well, if you count the Legend of Zelda one, it's like three projects running. Although I'm not sure if my Legend of Zelda project will ever be realized, but believe me, like I
Mm-hmm.
have such a good idea for Legend of Zelda movies. Like I, I let people review it, and they're like, "Oh God, this is pretty great." I feel like I understand the fandom, I
Oh,
understand the lore, and I understand how to make a really good story out of it. Next to that, I've slasher horror film with a Dutch sort of theme, which is called Paperhead, which is about
oh,
a
okay.
slasher that kills people in the manner of paper. Hello, Chenna. And I also have the TV pilot right now from the class that I'm doing, which is called Deja Voodoo.
Oh, okay. You have several things lined up then. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
the thing with Zelda might be a little hard to sell unless you know people at Nintendo.
well,
Might be.
that's the thing, right? It's all kind of like nepotism and
Yeah.
connections sometimes, but a man can't dream, Just saying, like, but I have it on the back burner, just like Paperhead right now, because I have to focus on the classes first.
Mhm. You have another or one. Is your
Okay.
audio not show?
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay,
I can
awesome.
hear you just fine.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we'll give people a couple more minutes to join us. Meantime, we're just kind of, shooting the breeze about screenwriting in general. Anybody has some like, I don't know, questions or stuff that they're struggling with or want to chat about their projects?
Well, from what I understand, I need to read like the themes of like the beat sheet a bit more. Like just like Connor pointed out, like I was totally on the wrong with themes stated. It should all just be intro, like almost all of it.
Yeah, I mean it's maybe a bit rigid, the save the cat, some of the beats, I mean it's nice to have some kind of clear introduction of what your theme is early, but when you're kind of just outlining, you may not even know your theme yet. Sometimes you don't figure out your theme until like the third draft of the script or something. But yeah,
That's true.
yeah, and sometimes
Also,
you need other people to tell you what the theme is. Like people who read it, like they're like, "I think your theme is this," and you're like, "Yeah, exactly. That's what I intended all along."
yeah, I actually had like moments with that when I explained like parts of my novel. They're like, "Oh shit, that's about duality, man," and I'm like, "Yeah, kind of is, right?" Sometimes you have like a subconscious way of like writing the metaphysical, which is like I don't know if you're much of a believer in spirituality, but I do think there's something very spiritual about creativity and making stories.
Yeah, awesome. And I think any belief system that can, make it easier to crank out pages, go for it, 100%, man. Um,
It is kind of like magic to like just conjure up images inside of your mind. Like think of any other animal. It's like, hey, I have these random things in my mind, so I'm gonna start drawing comics or whatever, right?
yeah, like I think David Lynch had a kind of strange.
Oh, you're muted right now, Nacho. I don't
Oh,
know if you're
yeah,
there.
David Lynch had kind of a strange sort of metaphor or whatever. How he pictures it like, you know, it's like an ocean of consciousness or something, or like that's where all the ideas come from. It's just like a big ocean, and he's just like trying to catch a big fish. Like, you know,
Yeah, David Lynch is way out there.
yeah, yes.
But that's
Um,
why his movies have such a dreamlike quality to them.
yeah. So, well, let's get started, and we'll see if some folks show up in the middle. Okay, so make sure. Welcome everybody who's hello everybody on YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and everywhere else out there. So this is the introductory class for the feature bootcamp, right? So this is an 8-week course that will take you from idea to finished draft. So first draft of a 90 to 120 page feature screenplay in 8 weeks. Can you do it? I've been through the boot camp. I did it 3 times. We have some students who wrote, like 5 scripts in these boot camps. It definitely works. There are lots of different ways to write a script, lots of different ways to outline, to pre-write, to prepare your script. But this is a really super practical nuts and bolts approach that, works for Conor Kyle, and it works for a lot of us here at Scriptcamp. So for anyone who is on Twitch or YouTube, we encourage you to join us on Discord, and you can participate a little bit more in the class. So anyways, and I'll post, give me a second here. I'm just going to post the link in streaming platforms, make sure everybody can see it. Okay, I think that is working. Okay, so we'll continue. So hopefully everyone can hear okay. What is Scriptcamp? We are a screenwriting community focused on helping you take your concept from idea to first draft to polished script. There are lots of free classes, events, and workshops. Just, join us on Discord. You can find lots of stuff going on almost every single day. Some paid classes. These are VIP member classes on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Screenwriting boot camps on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and the Scriptcamp Writers Lab every Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time. A little bit about Conor Kyle. He is the founder, CEO of Scriptcamp. He's a pro working screenwriter. 2017, his script Peter and the Wolves was in the top 10, the Launchpad top 10. That's how he got his first manager. That's how he broke into the industry. Started getting lots of writing assignments for producers, developing lots of different projects. He was also placed in the semifinals of Nickel with the Tube and the quarterfinals with Peter and the Wolves. This is one of the best scripts of the past several years. Highly encourage everybody to read Peter and the Wolves. He wrote for Shudder's Creepshow, and he has a new thriller script which is set up with the producers of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Conor teaches our screenwriting boot camps on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and the weekly Writers Lab every Saturday afternoon. A little bit about me. My name is Nacho. My background is in film distribution and development. So to be clear, I'm not a pro screenwriter. I started out in this industry. My first gig after college was selling martial arts movies in Hong Kong. I worked at Disney for 5 years, developing international co-productions. I worked in acquisitions, licensing, programming, development, and currently I work at an augmented reality company developing content for AR glasses. So we develop new kinds of stories for new mixed reality formats. And I teach a lot of the classes here at Scriptcamp about screenwriting fundamentals. So what is the bootcamp? This will take you from idea to first draft. Very step-by-step practical approach. 2-hour weekly classes with Conor, 8 weeks for the feature, 6 weeks to write a TV pilot, 4 weeks for the rewrite bootcamp. This takes you from a rough draft to a polished script in 4 weeks. And a little bit about the upcoming schedule, the feature bootcamp. So the first class is going to be next Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific. Week 1, why this story? You're going to refine your logline. You're going to fill out your sketchbook. This is a document where you keep all your notes and you're going to kind of put together, start fleshing out the characters, imagining some of the important Act 2 scenes from your movie. What is this movie all about? What are the scenes you would imagine in the trailer? What are the set pieces you want to picture, you want to imagine and flesh out, and start coming up with possible endings and really kind of like flesh out your world, your characters. It's just a place to gather all your notes, right? So there's no right or wrong way to do a sketchbook, but you're going to fill it out this first week of the boot camp and refine your log line. You're going to come back the second week and you're going to start breaking the story. You're going to break the story into beats, develop the important moments on your main character's journey, and you're starting to figure out what are the scenes that are taking place in the intro section, in the Act 2, and what are the important like moments in your main character's journey. What's the midpoint? What's your ending? You're kind of like writing this all out. It's a sort of a bullet list summary, a few pages, most of the scenes in your movie, right? So then by the following week, you have your story beats ready. You're going to start on your scene cards. And what are scene cards? This is something when I first started working with Conor, I thought to myself, man, this is crazy. This is nuts. This is so much detail. Why would anybody do this? Why not just start writing the script? I've been writing scripts for a long time, since high school. I've written about 15 screenplays. I've tried lots of different outlining processes, and I, used kind of index cards where you kind of put them on the wall. You have lots of different ways to outline. There's not any one particular way, but when I saw the way that Conor does his scene cards, it's basically like a detailed paragraph or two describing exactly what's happening in every single scene. I gave it a shot. The end result, I went from, it used to take me about 6 months to a year to write each script. Working with Conor, actually going through this process, doing the scene cards, you're kind of tricking your brain to start writing before you actually start, writing the pages. And the end result, it took me about 3 to 4 weeks to do the complete outlining process from idea to finish scene cards, and about 2 to 3 weeks to write the script. So I was able to write 3 scripts in these boot camps in the past 6 months or so. So you'll complete your scene cards that week, and by March 11th, you're going to start actually writing the pages, right? From here on, you will write about 20 pages every week, and go on March 18th, March 25th, you're going into the Act 2, the first half of Act 2, second half of Act 2, and the final week, April 8th, you're going to write the rest of your script. It's going to be finished by April 15th. So by April 15th, you will have a new first draft, completely new screenplay that hopefully this is maybe even a brand new idea that you've just came up with, and something fun to write. Conor encourages students to, stay away from some big project you've been working on for years and try something totally new for the bootcamp. So, what is the Writer's Lab? This is every Saturday, intensive weekly script development sessions. Conor and other pro screenwriters will be available to help bootcampers work through specific problems in their projects. How to enroll. So you can purchase the bootcamp class a la carte, scriptcamp.net/classes. You can go there right now and select Teacher Bootcamp, February to April. It'll show you which section you're gonna get, or you can enroll. You can get a free trial, unlimited membership, and it works out actually a lot more inexpensive. It's $49 a month if you decide to continue after the free trial, and that includes all classes, all boot camps, the Writer's Lab, everything. It's like over 60 hours of classes available. These are live classes plus a complete, library of all the previous classes. So it's pretty good deal. We have also, if you're just interested in checking out the server, helping us out with some of our, cover some of the costs of the free events we do. There is the basic script camps, $5 a month, and this is 8 screenwriting classes. So it's like Wednesdays and Thursdays, pretty, amazing deal. $5 a month. It's like 50 cents a class, something like that. But the unlimited membership includes all the boot camps and the Writer's Lab. So, okay, so your script finished in 8 weeks. Will this draft be good?
More on the amateur side.
Yeah, I mean, it's a first draft. It's gonna have a lot of problems. Even pro screenwriters who are, working at an incredibly high level, who have put years and years into developing the skills to write screenplays quickly and at a high level of quality, they still, the first draft is usually going to have a lot of problems no matter who you are, right? Let's move beyond the idea that any individual script needs to be good, right? We're writers because we have good ideas, right? We believe in our ideas. We believe our ideas will make great scripts. And this is why we get excited about them. We want to write them. But to become a working screenwriter, you have to untether yourself from these ideas to some extent, right? In the best case scenario, your idea will be bought, developed, rewritten, and then directed. This is the absolute best case scenario, right? Well, it's going to go through lots and lots of changes, right? Developing a script into a finished film is a massive team effort with lots and lots of different people working at different companies, like all, sort of championing your script and talking about your script with, like it's something that it's not like just one person goes out there and, turns it into a finished film, right? Unless you're talking about something that you can direct yourself. That would be a whole other option. But getting your script through the traditional studio development process, it's like requiring, dozens of people, like reading your script, like making lots and lots of changes, notes, and all this kind of stuff, for any kind of project to go through the entire development process to get made, right? Especially if you're just breaking into the industry. So your objective is to become a generator of unlimited ideas, right? Develop the skills you need to execute them, to execute these ideas, turn them into finished scripts consistently, within about 8 to 12 weeks, crank out another script, and with a high level of quality, right? So the course is not intended to coach you into writing a single great script or a script that will go anywhere, get you meetings, reps, or money. It takes years of writing many scripts to get to this level. Just release yourself from these expectations. Give yourself permission to write a bad script. It's going to have lots of problems, but this is work. It takes a long time. Nobody starts out good at it, right? So Conor suggests pick something, completely new, fresh idea for the bootcamp. A new idea maybe that you're less attached to or invested in over the years. Not something you've been kicking around, for years, right? If you're spending more than 6 months on a single script, you might need to change up your process. It's your job to write many, many bad scripts in order to get to the good ones. And I'm just going to post a link here for those folks out there on Twitch and YouTube and Twitter and everywhere else, where you can join us to participate in the class. Okay, there we go. So some myths and assumptions. You need a film degree. You need an internship, classes, workshops, film studies degree to do this. You need to take the boot camp to do this. To break into the industry, you've got to take Conor's classes. Is that a myth? Is this true? Do you really need all this stuff? And welcome, Tenon. Hopefully you're able to hear okay. There is a video presentation. If you just click on my name, you can follow along. I'll ping everybody here. So no, you don't need any of this. What do you need to write script, to become really skilled at writing scripts? All you need is read lots of scripts, watch movies, write lots of scripts, right? That's how you get better. But it definitely helps. Classes help. Getting feedback from other people who are going through, who are, at your level or a little bit higher in screenwriting, in their own journey as screenwriters, is going to help you to get, to improve your work. Another myth, this is all networking, nepotism. I mean, networking is a huge part of it. It's a big difference sending a script to somebody you don't know, like a anonymous, query letter out of the blue to some manager or producer or somebody, versus, sending a script to somebody that you have actually met in person or you have some connection with. It's very different. But I broke into this industry. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any family in the industry. So in my case, I broke in as an outsider. Nobody reads scripts in Hollywood. Well, there are lots of people who read maybe synopsis more than actual reading scripts, because it takes longer. It takes a lot more time to read a complete script. But yeah, just as somebody who's worked film festivals, as a judge at contests where you're receiving all these scripts and stuff, and it's somebody who's worked, in development, I definitely had to read lots and lots and lots of scripts for my job. So there are people working in this industry whose job is to read tons of scripts. There are cargo containers of amazing scripts sitting around unmade in Hollyweird because the suits don't recognize true genius. Well, it's very, very difficult to write even a mediocre screenplay, right? That's really challenging. Just to write a mediocre script, to write a really good one is super hard. It's super challenging. There's no clear way to do it. And to write an even amazing, like fantastic, brilliant script is even harder. It's really, really difficult. And even if you succeed, there are going to be lots of people who disagree. Even look at some of the most highly acclaimed scripts. You'll find people who hate them, right? You'll find people are polarized by the scripts they like or don't like. There's a lot of subjectivity about this, but it's really hard to write even just a mediocre script. To write a amazing script is, extremely rare, right? So ideas are overflowing. Great movie ideas are overflowing from every Starbucks in Los Angeles. You can't walk 2 feet without tripping over somebody's brilliant movie idea, but ideas are worthless. You can't copyright an idea. Ideas, nobody is looking for ideas or looking to buy ideas. We're looking for people who can execute on ideas, great scripts are super, super rare in this industry. Bad movies are written by bad writers. Well, you can get rich quick doing this. I heard somebody sold their first script. This is an overnight success career. Once I get a manager, it's all gravy, baby. Okay, so let's look at the realities. You do need to be in LA to be a working TV writer. During the pandemic, there are lots of writers' rooms that operate through Zoom, but this is there. You can't replace the process of working in a writer's room in person. It just doesn't work the same way over Zoom. So most writers' rooms are getting back to getting people working together in the room. And if you're planning to work in TV, I would plan to be like relocating to LA. For a feature writer, it's not 100% required, but it makes networking a lot easier. There are, industry events every other day in Los Angeles. You'll just meet lots and lots of people working in the film industry who may be people that, are coming up with at the same time as you are. Someone who is a friend working as assistant is, working hard to try to become an agent or a manager or whatever it is, or so there's kind of like a crop of people all working, helping each other at the same time, and you'll find friends that will help you as you help them. So this is a frustrating and exhausting career, requires a huge commitment of time and brain power. Better chance of joining the MLB than becoming a paid feature writer. It can be incredibly rewarding. A first script sale is likely to be at WJ minimum, which is around $100,000. Take out 10% for an agent, 15% for a manager, maybe 5% for a lawyer, 1.5% for WGA dues, and you're down to $73,000. If you live in LA, you end up with about $55,000 after taxes. That doesn't go very far in a place like LA, where the average monthly rent is maybe about $2,300 for a one-bedroom apartment. So keep in mind, lots of people who actually join the WGA and sell a script may not sell anything else, or may not, have any other income from screenplays for another year. So it's hard to live on. I would plan on having some other kind of day job or something, even if you're getting close to, making sales of your scripts. Most novelists, most professional screenwriters have other jobs that help support them, and they're paying the bills and stuff while they're selling screenplays or manuscripts. So how to become a feature writer? Number one, step one, get really, really good at writing movies. Stop. Number 2, stop. You didn't do step 1. Go back and do that. Seriously. Make a portfolio of 3 to 5 unique, riveting, and undeniably incredible scripts. Get repped by a manager. How do you do that? So
by entering contests.
Yes, yeah, definitely. This is the most common way to get a manager these days, is placing highly in screenwriting contests, fellowships, high profile contests. If it's a small, lower tier contest, second tier contest, it might not be that impressive to just place. Maybe they're looking for winners or finalists or top 10, right? But for some of the super high profile, like the Nickel Fellowship, just getting quarterfinals and semifinals is it's a feather in your cap. It definitely says something. If you get an 8 on the blacklist, supposedly this means you're writing at a pro level, right? So there are lots of ways to kind of make yourself stand out. But it's, again, you're sending a query letter, an email to a potential manager, and in the subject you're saying, I won this contest, blah, blah, blah. Please take a look at my script. You're sending them information about yourself, your log line. It's night and day compared to sending your script to somebody that you've already met in person, that you know from Sundance or from Cannes or wherever. And it's just a little bit different. It's like when you're applying for a job and you don't know anybody at the company and you just submit your resume online. It goes into a big stack, right? But if you know somebody who works there, or you know somebody at that company, or the person, somebody who works in HR or whatever, it's night and day, right? It's a whole different, you go to like the express lane, right? So networking makes a huge difference. Just querying is just, it's hard to stand out. Maybe you have a like phenomenal log line and a brilliant script, but if you don't already have a portfolio of 3 to 5 unique, riveting, and undeniably incredible scripts, if you aren't already a phenomenal writer, it's a waste of time to do these meetings, right? Because you only have one script. It's like, you're going to go through this whole process just to get another one, right? And like the people that you are meeting with are going to be interested, maybe not interested in that particular project, right? So it's like a wasted meeting, because you could have been pitching one of your 3 or 4 other fantastic, undeniably incredible scripts, but you didn't have them ready yet. So you can pitch an idea and, okay, let me go write that script and then I'll send it to you. It's just it's kind of a waste of time to get these meetings without already being a phenomenal writer, highly skilled, with at least a few incredible, like really, really well written scripts, right? So work with that manager. Once you have the manager, now you're trying to get a writing assignment, right? So you're getting sent to general meetings with producers, and you're getting sent to pitch on a writing assignment, which requires you to actually, well, maybe this producer has the rights to some novel, right? They're looking to hire a writer to adapt the novel. So what does that involve for you as a writer to try to be considered for that job? You're going to have to probably read that novel and figure out how you would write a movie, like how you would translate that and actually break the story and figure out, you're outlining an entire novel. This is a lot of work, that you're doing for free just to be considered for the gig, right? So you're preparing some kind of a document, like a 2-sheet synopsis of, what would be your take on this novel, right? Or what would be your take? The producer has the rights to a popular Reddit post. How would you make a movie based on this Reddit post? How would you make a movie based on the poop emoji? I have the rights to the poop emoji, and I'm looking for writers, right? you're going to like, you know, you're going to work with that manager to develop a spec that they can take out, right? So that's something that is, you know, the manager, something that may win contests or place highly in contests, and you bring it to your you finally get a manager, and they're like, okay, all right, I like that one, but what else do you got? Let's find a script that I can sell, right? Maybe they gonna have you rewrite that script that just won all those awards, and you feel like, oh man, this has got to be a great script because it would place so highly in the nickel or whatever. But the manager still wants changes, right? Before they need to be happy with it before they're going to be comfortable taking it to their buyers, right? So this takes a long time. I mean, Conor mentioned going through like 7 drafts with a manager, like significant rewrites every single time, just to get something that they felt they would be comfortable taking out, right? And this is the process. And then you take it out and you get something optioned, and then, you know, it's in development, and the producer is developing it, and that goes on, right? Or you're taking general meetings, you're getting specific meetings on a script, you're working with producers, you're doing tons of free work, right? You do the preceding steps about 500 times, projects fall apart. Finally, something sells, gets produced, you know, join the WJ, and you have the party, right? Okay. Any questions about any of this stuff? Okay, so yeah, Tenon, are you able to hear okay? Can you hear us okay, Tenon? Okay. So you asked a question, what's a credible script? Okay, yeah, incredible. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So why is this so difficult? Well, getting good feedback is hard, right? It's difficult to gauge where your skill level is, where it needs to be. A script is a very long document. It's hard to discern a script's quality just by like a cursory glance, right? And it's hard to keep the entire story straight as if you're like revising a script, right? People have a huge spectrum of reactions. We talked about even some highly praised scripts on the blacklist that, you know, some people love and some people hate. There's some subjective aspect of reading a script. People who don't read scripts usually just want to support you, right? Or else they don't know what to look for or how to actually analyze a story. People who do read scripts and know how to analyze a story often charge money for coverage. Great writers groups are hard to find and keep going. So the reward part of the create, share, reward art cycle missing for screenwriters. This means, you know, when you're a little kid and you draw a picture, your mom and dad put it up on the, you know, on the fridge, and it's like, okay, my art is done and it's out there, I'm getting feedback, right? As a screenwriter, like, what can we do? We can't, you know, you publish your script on Amazon, self-publishing, and nobody's going to read it. You know, the people who read screenplays are other writers, people working in the industry. It doesn't get out there to the public, really, to get that kind of reward of, you know, mass, I don't know, like adoration or, you know, positive feedback or negative feedback or whatever. You're just really, all we have is kind of other writers and, you know, pros who have jobs of reading lots of scripts, right? So that can feel a little bit sort of lonely as like from the creative side, you're writing these scripts, and sometimes it can feel like you're writing in a vacuum because nobody ever reads your scripts other than other writers, right? So, and why write a movie? You want to be a professional screenwriter? You want to become more skilled at this craft? You want to direct the movie yourself? Or you want to write this as a fun hobby for personal enjoyment, right? These are all fantastic reasons to write a movie. Right? So, a master bricklayer making a road does not care whether any individual brick is a masterpiece or even particularly good. you have a road to build, right? You see all these bricks. These are your scripts that you'll be writing on your road to becoming a working pro screenwriter. Maybe not quite so many, but you need to write lots, right? So idea to first draft in 8 weeks. These are the steps. This is the Scriptcamp, process. Is Conor's process. This is one way. This is not the way to write a script, but this is one way that works for Conor, works for, lots of the former bootcamp students. We have one student wrote 5 screenplays in the bootcamps. I wrote 3 this way in like a period of about 6 months. So logline, sketchbook, story beats, scene cards, then go to pages. So what is all this stuff? What's a logline?
Logline.
So,
Did you guys hear me?
yes.
All right. Yeah, I didn't see the green circle there. But from what I understand, it's like the log line is like a very tight summary, like the movie in a nutshell, but like in a very clear defined way that within a sentence you can basically tell somebody what the movie is about.
Yeah.
Stakes and goals.
Exactly. Yeah. Like your entire story distilled down to a sentence or two. So we're going to be like looking at your log lines today, right? So if you have a movie idea or log line, you can, maybe start thinking about what you're going to write as you're listening to the rest of this presentation. But we're going to like help you workshop your refine your idea today, like your idea for a feature film. And there are, again, there are lots of different ways to write a script, but a log line serves a purpose as a marketing tool to get people to read your script. Obviously, even if you just post a script here on Scriptcamp and you'd like people to read it and give you feedback, if you have a fantastic dynamite log line, it's going to be a lot more likely that people will actually read your script and give you feedback. If you want to get producers or other people to read your script, obviously they're looking at your log line, and maybe someone who's an intern at a production company or a literary agency takes home your script. They take home 50 scripts to read over the weekend, and she's overworked and underpaid and trying to find a gem in this big pile to impress her boss and get her boss to bring the writer in for a meeting and maybe get promoted so she's no longer an intern. This is somebody who's like, then if she likes your script, she's got to explain it to her boss. If your log line is really complicated or doesn't make sense or just is not, appealing, it's going to be harder for that person to convince their boss to even just read your script, right? And if your boss likes it, if her boss likes it, it's going to be harder for him to explain the story to other people, right? So the more you can make your script, if you start with a great log line, it's going to be easier for people to talk about your script and convince other people to read it, and hopefully get your story, get some traction somewhere, right? But it also serves as a writing tool. A really solid log line is making it really clear, like, who's this story about? What do they want? What's in their way? What are we watching this person do on screen for 90 minutes? That is already going to give you a head start on the outlining process, right? It already has some of the story beats in your log line. So Sketchbook is just like a place to collect all your notes as you're developing. So you have a great log line. Personally, I find it very difficult to develop a log line by myself in a vacuum. I've got to bounce ideas around, get feedback, sort of workshop it with other writers, with other people. And then, when I feel it's really solid, I just create a sketchbook. I start collecting notes, putting together ideas for scenes, fleshing out the characters, ideas for dialogue, maybe figuring out, what are the scenes going to be happening in Act 2, and what is what are some possible endings. Start figuring all that out. At some point, I'm ready to actually break the story into beats and create the outline, and then the scene cards. The scene cards, this is, again, this is like a step that in Conor's process, after you have an outline, you create a document that's got basically a list of every single scene, and it's describing in prose, in a paragraph or two, what exactly is happening in every scene. So then when you go to pages, you're not spending time figuring out what's happening in the scene, right? So anyways, this is just one approach. This is Conor's process, and it works. We encourage everybody to try it. You're gonna have to find your own process. Everyone is going to find some different, procedure that's going to work for you. The only way to do it is to try this, actually write the script, and you're going to find, yeah, definitely. I'll share some examples here. Here's some examples. So essentially, you're going to find the process that works from you only by outlining, going through these steps, and then you actually write the script. And you're going to be like, oh, when I was outlining, I kind of skimped over this scene in Act 2, and you know what? I got stuck when I was writing. I lost my momentum, right? So I probably, next time I'm going to try to flesh that out more. Or, while I was writing, I found like I didn't need so much detail. I should have, maybe my scene cards should have been a little shorter, or I didn't need scene cards, or whatever it is. You're going to find the process that works for you just by actually preparing, doing the pre-writing, outlining the whole story, and writing the script. And then you're going to refine your process each time you write a script, and eventually you're going to hit on like exactly the process that works for you. So let's talk about story structure. So what is story structure? Yeah, that's a great point, Tenon. So I have used lots of different outlining process. So Tenon asks, for those who are watching on Twitch or YouTube, Tenon is asking, so scene cards don't actually have to fit into an index card. And I have been writing scripts for a long time, and I've written about 15 screenplays, and I really enjoyed using actual index cards, and I've tried using, for example, like Final Draft software has a kind of cards, like mode where you can write things on cards, and actual index cards where I write things out and put them on the wall. And so I have like this big cork board. It's like covered in index cards of different colors. And it's kind of cool to see everything and kind of be able to move it around. But the thing is, I had two problems. Once I started working with Conor, the level of detail that he writes in the cards, it doesn't fit on a little index card if you're writing, especially if you're writing by hand. And they didn't fit in the Final Draft cards either. So maybe if you get like really big cards and write them out in detail, that might help. Or, maybe the cards is like a different step in the process for you. It's kind of like the story beats stage or something. But at some point, I found writing the scene cards out, even though this is a lot of detail. I mean, the first time I saw Conor's scene cards, I was like, oh my God, why would anybody do this? This looks like a lot of work, so much detail. But I, went through the steps. I actually wrote out, what is happening in this scene. And I went from, it used to take me about 6 months to a year to write each script. And now it's like about 3 to 4 weeks for the whole outlining process from idea to finish scene cards, then about 2 to 3 weeks to write the script. So I'm writing all of the pages, like, 90, 100 page script in about 2 weeks. So it's really, for me, it's really fast. So it's a lot faster this way to kind of figure this stuff out before I start writing the pages. But everyone needs to find the process that works for them. So far I found that it seems to be a little bit more convenient using Google Docs for the scene cards rather than writing them out on index cards. So story structure. If the writer doesn't know where the story is going, the audience can't possibly know. This is a quote from the Coen brothers. Vince Gilligan, who's seen Breaking Bad. People think of writing as dialogue. To me, writing is structure. Dialogue is the cherry on top. The cherry on top does not support the ice cream sundae. It's a delicious little added thing, but the storytelling structure, building the scaffolding, that, to me, is the real work of writing. So, any questions about any of this? So what is story structure? We talk about structure a lot in the boot camps. So it's the organization of the events in your story, right? Does that make sense? Oh, sorry. Could you say that again, Tom?
Oh yeah. I was also like reading through the server a bit, so I noticed the silence. I was like, oh, he probably asked a question. So I was like, should I reply or not? Yeah, but like structure, of course, like it makes sense, right? Structure is the way in which you sort of like order your things, and there's probably lots of methods that you can structure things through. But some of the things, just like the class I recently had, is one way of structuring, is using a beat sheet, for instance. There's lots of ways you could order your story, and if you orient yourself on creating your story, your structure is very important, or it could at least give you like something to lean upon, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are lots of different ways to kind of like prepare, pre-write, or outline, prepare your story before you actually start writing in a way that you're kind of planning the structure. And, there are some authors who write a complete novel without any outlining at all. They just jump into it and start writing, somehow their mind is, there maybe the structure sometimes doesn't make sense in some ways, sometimes with a certain kind of novel, but generally we're talking about essentially the difference between just like a list of events that are not related versus like events that make sense in a sort of sequence, right? Instead of I go to I went to the store, a dog chased a cat, a robber entered the bank, so these like scenes are not really related, right? Or they're just kind of events that don't really tell a story. But if I went to the store, so I tried to open the door, but it was locked. So I went around to the back of the store to try to find another way in, and a dog chased a cat out of the dumpster or something, and it frightened me. And then I don't know. I mean, basically, just you want to try to consider, like, is this just a list of events, or are the scenes in my story like tied together in a logical way? Like, is this causing the next thing, right? That structure is when each event is causing, sort of like causing or makes sense. Like, you know, so try to think about a character wants something. Are they going to get it? Yes or no, right? In that particular scene, the answer could be no, they fail. And then, you know, so then something worse happens, right? It's not just and then something unrelated, but it's got to be, you know, driven by what just happened in that previous scene, right? Or maybe, yes, they get what they want, but then there's a complication, you know, or they're causing something worse to happen to them, right? Especially a screenplay or a TV pilot, but just stories in general are about characters, you know, going through worse and worse and worse situations that they're sort of bringing on themselves. And you really, you know, playing God, you're not the, you're kind of like the vengeful God that's really putting this character through hell. So structure is your friend, not your enemy. Don't battle it too much until you know the norms, until you know the expectations, how a script should feel. Then you can start really, you know, experimenting in a deliberate way to thwart expectations of the reader, expectations of the audience. You're making a choice to do that when you've mastered, you know, the basics of how a script should feel in terms of the story, right? This is not a set of manacles slapped on by the man to make your movie into Hollywood trash. Structure is here to help you. By the time you're done with multiple rewrites, the page number benchmarks will almost certainly be shifted around, right? So don't worry about, oh my God, my inciting incident is on page 12. Everybody's gonna, you know, think my story is like a formulaic or something. Like, don't even worry about any of that. You know, we're getting through the first draft of a story that's gonna have multiple rewrites, and the page numbers aren't gonna even be the same and multiple, you know, rewrites down the road. And even if they do, you know, this is not even a serious issue to be concerned about. Like, what does this happen on this specific page or not? We're looking more at the overall kind of story, the logic of the structure of your story, right? Does it make sense? Is it riveting? Are we engaging? Are we hooking the reader in the first, you know, like few pages? Is this something that that someone wants to continue reading? They don't want to put it down, right? That's the most important thing. So you're not locked into the structure of your outline. You know, a movie evolves organically while writing it. You won't have absolutely everything nailed down and in place from the start, right? You will end up discovering some things just by writing it. Even if you have a detailed scene cards, you're still going to find more stuff as you're writing, right? And writing a movie is writing a train that you must build while it's in motion. Read lots of scripts. Really, really read lots of scripts. And I'm going to post a link here to read some of the blacklist scripts. You know, check out some of these. These are popular, unproduced spec screenplays that haven't been, you know, that weren't written for hire, right? That means there wasn't a producer who just had a whole package with directors and everybody, and he said, okay, I want to hire a writer to write this. These are ideas that writers had that they wrote on their own that developed, you know, into scripts that are considered some of the best, right? So if you it's a good idea to read some of these, especially some of the recent ones from the past few years. If you open that link, you'll see the 2021 folder, 2020, 2019, and go through some of these. Just read them. Even read the first few pages if you don't have time to read the whole script. But try to read, ideally, you know, 3 each week, at least 1 every week, right? So Tenon asks, should we focus on planning out acts or scenes? So that's a great point. I mean, essentially, your screenplay is basically a collection of scenes that are ordered in a way that logically makes sense. That your entire story is kind of an external journey that is designed to force your main character to go through this kind of a big internal journey, right? To go through this change from the, external pressure that you're putting on him through this big external journey, right? So, like, the first thing I would do is develop a log line, just a sentence or two describing what who's the main character, what do they want, what's in their way, right? Then you're going to start to flesh out, coming up with some ideas for scenes. You may not have an idea, but your log line is going to be basically Act 2. So your movie is Act 2, right? So your log line is like your inciting incident, which is the important thing that gets the movie going. That's going to be in Act 1. And the Act 2 goal, like what does this character want, right? If this is a movie about somebody, a disgraced professor saving the Earth from an asteroid, Act 2 is all about them trying to save the Earth from an asteroid, right? This is about, a nerdy high school student pretending to be an exchange student from Sweden to win the heart of the prom queen. Like Act 2 is all about him dressing up and pretending, going on all the dates, trying to win the heart of this prom queen. And it's sort of like your Act 2 is your movie. So you're going to get most of the idea of what's happening in Act 2 from your log line, right? So you have a log line, you have a sketchbook, you start coming up with more ideas for scenes in Act 2, and probably starting to come up with ideas for your ending, right? And at some point, you're going to flesh out the characters, the location, all this kind of stuff. There's no right or wrong way to do a sketchbook. It's just for you. But you're going to take that document and you're going to create an outline, right? So your outline is going to be like, if you can see in some of these documents that I shared. Sorry, do you mind, guys, give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
We'll stick around there, Nacho. Don't worry. So, if you have any questions for me, Tenen, like what brings you here? We can see from your roles that you're a screenwriter.
Everybody, sorry about that. Had a doggy emergency. So, cool. So, hopefully, does that help answer your question about acts or scenes, Tenen? Yeah, so we're coming up with, we'll go into a little bit more about the acts and the scenes, but basically, like, to start out, you're just coming up with the overall idea of the movie, right, which is your log line, and that's basically inciting incident and Act 2. It's kind of like a trailer, like the trailer that you would imagine is basically inciting incident and Act 2, like the fun scenes that are what the movie's all about, right? Then we start to come up with more ideas for scenes, and then we start fleshing it out and figuring out, what's happening in the intro, what's happening in the midpoint, all this kind of stuff. And then we go to the scene cards, we actually have just a list of every scene in the movie, right? So, and again, you're not locked into this. This is just, it's a process that is helpful for lots of writers to finish scripts quickly, right? So whatever you need to do to go from your idea to having a finished screenplay that is a high quality, first draft, that, ticks the boxes it needs to check. If you're writing a horror movie that's meeting the expectations for this genre, or if you're writing a comedy, whatever you're writing, you want to have a script that's complete first draft that feels like it, checks all the boxes that it needs to check, and it's something that you're like really fulfilling the promise of your log line, right? Your log line has a lot of potential, and you're meeting the promise, like what we're expecting to see, and finishing that in 8 weeks. Whatever you need to do that, that go for it. I mean, you may find a different steps or different pre-writing process that helps you to write movies faster. We're all just kind of like learning as we complete each script. We get better, and we try different ways to write. But we're gonna kind of like eventually like refine the process that just works for each of us individually, right? So, so what about art house, foreign movies? The fact that there are other structures or films without a structure that may be like immediately clear, this doesn't mean that readers are going to be able to grasp like what you're trying to do. If you're trying to write something that's breaking, sort of 3-act structure, that's some totally different approach. For the most part, readers will maybe misinterpret what you're trying to do because they're going to assume, oh, this person just doesn't understand story structure, right? If you only have ideas that cannot, maybe it's, it fits more with a play or some other kind of format or a novel, right? But you can get away with really weird experimental stuff in a 3-act film. This is 100%. So hopefully this is helpful. This is kind of a, sort of a visual representation of 3-act structure, right? So there's an intro section. We're getting introduced to the world of the main character, right? What's missing in their life? What is is this someone who's a student? Are we seeing them at school? What's their job? Are we, what is their normal world like? We really have to understand, especially if this is a movie where the world is going to change or the character is going to go through a big change. It's harder to appreciate that without really absorbing what the normal world is like for this character, right? And the normal world doesn't mean just someone sitting around with no conflict. They're going to have, scenes where there's something they want that's difficult, or they're trying to, do some individual like tactical goal in that particular scene. But we're learning kind of a world where they would just continue without changing, right? Like think of Finding Nemo. This is a movie about keeping your kids safe versus letting them go to experience life. And in the intro section, your main character sort of believes the opposite of the theme, right? Nemo's dad, Marlin, he witnesses, his wife and all of his kids, all of his eggs get, eaten by a barracuda. Only one survives, and it's got a little deformed flipper, and he is just, keeping that kid safe no matter what, right? So he believes the opposite of the theme, right? Remember, the purpose of a movie is an external journey that forces your main character to go from believing the opposite of the theme to fully embodying the theme, right? So he believes you got to keep your kids safe. He believes the opposite of the theme, which is let your kids go to experience life. So he is in a stasis that would continue, right? Imagine if Nemo never got lost, if there was no catalyst, what would happen? He would continue smothering Nemo, overprotective, like helicopter dad, through the rest of his fish, junior high and fish high school and fish college. And, Nemo's 30 years old working as an accountant somewhere, and his dad is still going to be overprotective, hovering over him at his job, at his workplace, right? So your main character is in a stasis. They may not be happy, but they're stuck in a rut, in a kind of a world would keep on going forever, except for the catalyst. The catalyst is something that's going to shake up their world, force them to act, force them to do something different, right? So the catalyst is this event that, sets your movie into motion. They're going to start trying the locks. They're trying different approaches, different ways to break through. The catalyst shows like a doorway of something, and your main character, maybe they're trying the wrong way to do it. There's in a lot of superhero movies in this section. So one thing is, lots of superhero movies, the main character is learning how to use their powers, right? Or the story about a single mom living in a trailer park who goes to war with the big pharmaceutical company. Maybe the catalyst is her kid gets cancer, and so she knows this pharmaceutical company is poisoning the water. They're to blame. She can't afford the chemo treatment for her kid. What does she do? She gets in her beat up old car, drives over to the headquarters of the pharmaceutical company, barges into the meeting of the CEO, and forces them to just barges in. And maybe she just punches the CEO in the face. You need to pay for my kid's chemo treatment. It's your fault. And what happens? Does her situation get resolved? No. Security throws her out. She gets sent to jail. She learns, oh, that's the wrong way to go to war with the pharmaceutical company. Maybe she meets a lawyer in jail, and the lawyer's like, hey, let me tell you how to do this. You take these guys to court. You're going to do this, X, Y, and Z, and then you're going to really make them pay, right? So then the whole movie gets started, break into two. This is where the lawsuit gets filed, the subpoena for the CEO, recovering from his brutal attack. Now he's got to go to court, right? Your beginning of Act 2, this is your premise scenes. This is the heart of your movie. This is where the little train is. You want to see all of your, all the stuff that you would imagine from the movie. Like, if this is a movie about, whatever, guy saving the Earth from an asteroid. In this section, we better see him trying to save Earth from an asteroid, right? If you go to a movie and you walk out and somebody's like, "What was that movie about?" It was about, a kid trying to dress up as an exchange student to win some girl's heart, right? This is where you go on all the dates, all the robberies. You're planning you're carrying out the heist. You're solving the murders, whatever it is, whatever the movie's about, that's what you're doing in the beginning of Act 2, right? Up until your midpoint, there's some kind of escalation of the stakes, escalation of the danger. Maybe there's a twist. Your main character realizes, oh my God, look at this big roller coaster. Look at the enormity of the task in front of me, right? They're realizing it's really a lot. It's the thing that was their main goal. They actually, oh my God, it's going to be like really hard. I didn't realize it was going to be this hard, right? Escalation, situation gets worse and worse for your main character. The antagonistic force kind of closes in, and maybe they raise the stakes by, kidnapping someone close to your main character, or, this could be simply emotional stakes, right? What's something that happens a lot at the midpoint in a
Maybe the will they, won't they part.
Sorry, could you say that once more?
Maybe the will they, won't they part, where it's like maybe the relationship faced hardship. Maybe they're like, maybe we're not good for each other.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely sometimes there are different kinds of twists that can happen in a romantic comedy. One thing that's super common in lots and lots of romantic comedies is the midpoint is their first kiss, or the first time they sleep together, right? And then after the midpoint, the escalation, they're dealing with it. It raises the stakes in a emotional stakes, right? You're more vulnerable. If the main character is trying to win the heart of some love interest, and that's what the movie's all about, right? And they're trying all kinds of crazy things, going on dates, doing whatever. And in the first, part of Act 2, if they lose the love interest, just I'm just not interested in you. It's over. Well, it's sad, right? But imagine that happens after the midpoint, after they've already slept together. It's going to hurt a lot more, right? It's going to be more like you're more vulnerable emotionally if you've already crossed some line in your relationship, right? They already had their first kiss, or they already slept together. It's going to hurt more if you lose that person, right? So then we get to the all is lost moment. This is just going back to your log line. Your log line is asking a yes or no question. Will this single mom, bring down this big pharmaceutical company? Yes or no, right? And the answer is either no, she's going to fail, and then the situation gets even worse, right? Or yes, actually, it was the wrong goal. She should have been doing something else, right? So this is your all is lost and pit of despair. It's two twin moments right at the end of Act 2. They come right after each other, and all is lost is the worst possible outcome your main character can imagine based on the log line, right? It's a yes or no question. Will your main character do this? And the pit of despair is even worse. So it can't possibly get any worse, and it just got worse. How do you do that? How can you get even worse? I thought this was the worst possible outcome. Well, it's the worst possible outcome your main character can imagine, right? And then you, writer, you can imagine something even worse, right? So all is lost. Maybe in this example of the, trailer park mom, worst possible outcome, she screws up, because she's unorthodox, she screws up the case against this big pharmaceutical company. The case gets thrown out of court. She lost, right? There's no way she can win this. It's done. Then, pit of despair, what could be even worse? Maybe the, pharmaceutical company paid for her ex-husband's lawyer to sue to get custody of her kids. Hey, she's spending so much time on this court case, she's not taking care of the kid with cancer. So she loses her son. She loses the case, she loses her son. Maybe she gets evicted from her trailer, her car doesn't start, it starts raining, everything, the worst possible, you just pile it on. And then she breaks into Act 3. Break into 3, she remembers something. Oh, there was that box of files in the evidence room at the sheriff's office that they didn't want me to look at. I bet there's something in there. I'm going to go back, and now I'm going to do a whole new, goal, a new approach, another last swing at these bad guys. I'm going to take all that document and I'm going to leak it to the press. I'm going to attack them in the, in the public somehow. I don't know. Or maybe she's going to go and find some Wall Street traders to do a corporate takedown or some other approach. That's your finale, like another last effort. And this is a good section of your film. It's like maybe 20 pages, eight or 9 scenes of finale where you have to have more complications. And she's trying, one last attempt, and she's going to have little scenes in the finale to, pull off this final battle, right? Okay, so then we have an epilogue. Maybe that's, you need some extra scene to kind of tie up loose ends. Just my suggestion would be try to keep that short. So what's an act? So here's some more kind of breakdowns, different kinds of story structures. Hisho Tenketsu, this, so you can see even things that are supposedly really different, they all kind of follow sort of the same, they're just sort of different ways to describe the same fundamental, concept, which is like, it's like a model. This is the way human beings evolved over hundreds of thousands, over millions of years to tell stories. This is how we evolved to make order out of the chaos in our world, right? We were, in some, of people of, maybe 50 to 150 people, and we had to convey some information. I found something at the water hole today, and every story, even if we're talking about, if we divide this up into 4 acts, 5 acts, 6 acts, 8 acts, whatever, they're all just different ways to describe the same underlying model, which there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. This is true since Aristotle and, thousands of years ago in ancient Greece, and even farther back to the earliest days when we were living in, small groups of, 100, 150 people, and we had to tell somebody what happened at the river. I went down to the river. We have an introduction section, a catalyst, and I went down to the river, and there was a snake in the water. When I was trying to get a drink, a snake jumped out, and I got scared and I ran into the bushes, and oh my God, I ran into a tiger in the bushes, and the tiger growled, and I got super freaked out, and I ran and I climbed up a tree, and the tiger was chasing me, and I was on the very edge of the branch, and the tiger was almost reaching to me, and I was falling off, and then the branch started to, split into two, and I fell down, and then what did I do? So they all this, even if we're just telling a story, it has the same sort of beginning, middle, and end. There's a catalyst. There's an act two, which is what the story is all about, and there's an all is lost moment, and there's a pit of despair moment. It's all, it's just kind of different ways to describe the same thing. So, sure, yeah, they're, these are all available, and this is kind of what a typical feature looks like for Conor. So Act 1 is about 25 pages. Act 2 is 40 pages. So this is the most of the movie is Act 2, right? Your premise scenes is what the movie is all about. And this is kind of like, that this is a movie about somebody, like whether it's somebody just going to war with a pharmaceutical company, or, going to war with like a colony of groundhogs or whatever, prairie dogs attacking their garden. It doesn't matter. Most of the story is going to be the middle. This is what the story is all about, right? So you have an intro section, you have middle, and you have an end, right? So what is an outline? This is a blueprint for structuring the story of your movie. It gives you an overview of the story beats and scenes before you start writing. Many different styles and methods. We focus on Conor Kyle's practical approach to outlining. So let me just open it up to everybody. Have you ever outlined a script before? What was your process like? Or why bother even creating an outline or a log line?
Well, like I said, like the years before I started like joining the boot camp, I had this sort of idea, and you have to write down your ideas. If you don't, you forget them. Makes sense to at least develop things in chronological order, so you have a kind of like sheet to remember, like whatever it was you wanted to make. Like if you don't write down the beats, you might forget some vital elements or vital organs. Like even though sometimes you have to kill your darlings, sometimes you also want to preserve the concepts that you thought of, and having an outline can really help you saving those structures up, right?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. That is like a great way to put it. It's sort of it's hard to keep the entire structure straight in your head, and you can start writing a movie. The first few movies that I wrote, I just jumped in and started typing, right? I didn't do really any kind of process. I just had an idea. I had some interesting experience one weekend. I was like, oh, that would make a cool movie. And so I just started writing it out. And what happened for me? Well, usually you can think of some cool, maybe imagine a cool opening for a movie or something. And I started kind of like going forward. But what happened is like I was sort of writing myself into a corner because I didn't have a clear idea of what the ending was, right? So it's maybe a little bit, at the very minimum, I would, even if you're going to try to write something without a detailed outline, I would at least try to figure out the ending first, just because it's like, will at least give you some kind of place where you want to end up, But anyway, so like, what is a log line? You guys know this already. You have written a few log lines. Basically, we're looking for, what is the inciting incident? Who's the protagonist? What do they want? What's in their way? What happens if they fail? And sketchbook, there's no right or wrong way to do it. This is a place to collect your notes, sketches, and ideas as you develop your story, flesh out your characters. start coming up with act 2 scenes or set pieces, right? These are fun scenes that you might imagine in the trailer. If you have an idea and you cannot think of any act 2 scenes for this idea, maybe the idea isn't, sort of isn't working for you, right? Like if you go back to whatever got you really excited about the idea, that should be, you should be able to start imagining act 2 scenes pretty quickly. So I would suggest, if you're having trouble with this, just coming up with some of these scenes, maybe you want to consider a different idea that gets you a little more excited, right? So yeah, and you can include photos, drawings, anything that inspires your writing. So go ahead and, create your sketchbook, just call it title of the movie, sketchbook, title, genre, log line, comps, start posting in the chat. If you're trying to choose between multiple ideas, you can post them all here. So bootcamp ground rules: no true stories, anthologies, rewrites, or adaptations. If you have a script that you already wrote that you're considering doing a complete page 1 rewrite, maybe rethinking some fundamental aspects of the story, it might work for you. Otherwise, I would suggest to take it to the Rewrite Bootcamp. We do a new Rewrite Bootcamp every month, so there's lots of Rewrite Bootcamps available to join. But this is going to be probably, you'll get the most out of it if you come up with some brand new idea and just take it all the way from start to finish in 8 weeks. No time travel, just trust me. We had a few people write time travel stories and get stuck with, is this guy, what happens if my main character kills his own grandfather? How do I deal with all these paradoxes? It can be really complicated to work out a time travel story. So if you really want to write a time travel story, make it something where the person just like goes back in time and just stays there or something, rather than going back and forth in time. My suggestion: probably don't do a historical. It's probably something that, unless you've spent a lot of time researching this time period or setting, remember, we're writing a script in 8 weeks. It's a lot of work to research and, get something really straight with a time period. So the suggestion would be to avoid historical. This is a great time to take big swings, write a wacky, crazy, fun idea while building the skills and fundamentals. Just think about something you're going to have fun with. If you don't have an idea yet, how about some crazy mashup concept you've always wanted to see that never gets made? Werewolf CEO, a werewolf and a CEO. He's a werewolf. Being a CEO makes it harder to be a werewolf. Being a werewolf makes it harder to be a CEO. I don't know. What do you think? Get used to the idea of sharing all your work with Conor, your fellow students, and everyone, even at an early stage. It can be difficult to hear big notes, at an early stage. Please use your real name or anything that sounds like a real name. It can be your cousin's name, just somebody's name. We're going to be working really closely with the other students in the boot camp, and it just becomes awkward if we're like, thank you so much for your feedback on my script, Master Chief 42069. That was so insightful. Let's, instead of using a screen name, let's just pick some name or your real name or anything that sounds like a real name. So what are readers looking for in log lines? We're looking for stories with stakes or conflicts that are in some way primal, fitting the genre. Life or death, sex and love, friendship, revenge, log lines that imply the size of a story. The idea isn't too big. That would be maybe better suited to a miniseries or something, or a TV series, or too small, where it feels like maybe a one-act play or a short story or something. So movies that are visual, dynamic, fundamentally about people doing things. Even a drama, it's going to be about somebody doing something, right? You want to have some clear goalpost. How do we know how does a main character know when they achieve their goal or not? We should be able to, like, from your log line, have a clear sense, like, what are we watching the protagonist do on screen for 90 minutes? Your story should imply the primary action is going to be tracked through action, right? Tangible goals imply urgency, immediacy. What happens if the protagonist fails? Is it a big deal? Just try to think about these things. An element of the familiar mixed with something fresh and unique. Movies are stories that could only ever happen once, one specific way. Usually pivotal events in the protagonist's life. Your main character is uniquely suited for this story, right? You have a situation. What kind of character would have the toughest, longest, most ironic journey in that situation? The internal journey is mirrored, amplified, pushed to its inevitable conclusion by the external journey, right? And your character is going to change in interesting ways, right? Remember, the whole purpose of a movie is an external journey that forces your main character to go from believing the opposite of the theme all the way to being the full embodiment of that theme, right? To go on this big internal change by the end of the movie. That's forced by the external journey. So, let's try to make sure we have a hook, a sense of irony, or new or interesting point of view, some variation or interesting mashup of familiar elements. These are some of Conor's log lines. Peter and the Wolves: a sensitive boy in Nazi-besieged Leningrad must hunt down the cannibal that ate his friend. The Tube: in love with her boss, a melancholy housekeeper must follow the dark guidance of a strange, sentient television to get rid of his fiancée before they marry. Hintline: a jaded game designer becomes the only lifeline to a young assistant stranded in a ski lodge with her murderous boss. Guiding her over the phone, he must use his point-and-click mystery gaming skills to save both their lives over the course of one harrowing night. The Knowledge: struggling with a Herculean test to become a London cabbie. A brash young delivery driver partners with a cantankerous older coachman who draws him into a deadly scheme. So these are high concept log lines. Let's move ahead to okay, any questions about how to write a log line? Okay, we got a couple log lines from Tom and Joe Toole. So Tom says, I've also thought of an action thriller which would take place in a post-flood society. Okay, where the government. Okay, so maybe we can workshop this one a little bit as well. Okay, so post your log lines. In 1 second, I'm just going to get a drink. I'll be right back, and we'll jump into log lines. And for anyone out there in Twitch land or YouTube or Twitter or wherever you are, you're welcome to join us and post your log lines, and we'll go over them. So be right back in 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So, thanks. Sorry, just it was needed to get a drink of water. Okay, so let's start with paper hat. Tom, could you read this one out loud for us. Also, what is the genre?
Yeah, I forgot to mention genre, which is slasher horror, and but that is kind of evident in the log line a little bit. Um, so the movie's called Paperhead. When two acquaintances find out there's a serial killer on the loose who hunts after their former classmates, they have to work together with the police before they end up like their peers.
Okay, so what do you guys think? So is it clear who is the protagonist? What do they want? What's in their way? What are we going to be watching this person do on screen for most of the movie? So, number one thing, if there's any way you can pick one of these, it's going to be a lot easier to describe in the log line that person's going to have the most ironic, toughest, longest, most ironic journey in the story, right? So if it's two acquaintances, like, so there are some great log lines that involve like two different protagonists. These usually are good because they're the conflict is coming from the other protagonist, right? So like Mr. and Mrs. Smith type movie where it's about a husband and wife who discover they are each other's, assassination target. Well, the conflict is from the two people, right? Or Brokeback Mountain, two cowboys in the rural West must deny their gay love, or something. Well, there's conflict inherent in, each other, and we can kind of, it's sort of implied. Adulterous, are you saying that they're having an affair?
Yeah, they don't start out having one, but like throughout the movie, they do grow closer to each other because they used to be former lovers, basically, and it's also going to be play a bit of a theme in the role of the movie as well. So maybe that's interesting to mention. Although if they don't start out at that point, I wonder if it's good to mention in the log line.
I mean, I could see something like maybe two estranged lovers must when they have to work together with the police. That doesn't sound like a very interesting goal, right? Like objective, like, okay, so we just have to work together with the police. So what does that mean? Like answering the police questions, helping the police. It's more interesting if they have to, like solve the murder or something rather than just help the police. Does that make sense?
Well, that's the thing. There is a detective in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
but they are basically the two main characters because in the end the killer is after them, and their dynamic is that they stay in touch with each other, and they have to find a way to calm it, which could probably be in the log line now that I think about it, and basically there's also another character who's a detective who accompanies them in most of the scenes, and there's gonna be a part in the movie where he's absent and where he's back again.
I mean, just from what you're describing with lots of different characters, it kind of sounds maybe more like a longer series rather than a movie that's going to be over in 90 minutes. I don't know if that's something you've considered.
I definitely see this more as a movie.
Okay.
Although there are a lot of deaths in this movie, like
Mm-hmm.
8 in total. Well, I actually, now that I think about it, 6 in total. But basically, it's going to be this, slasher movies often have like a main character, I feel, but this is more like
I mean, like
about the character dynamics
a slasher
because they
movie.
have this.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Because they have a shared guild of like the kid that used to bully, who's the main suspect of being the murderer.
So like a slasher movie, the goal is survive the night, like stay alive. It's not like, just help the police, right? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, it feels like a really, really weak goal.
The reason they help the police is because they don't want their other classmates to die. They know they're on the list,
Well,
so they have to rush.
they don't want to die either before they end up like the peers, right?
Yeah, but that's basically the thing. Like,
I mean, could their goal be to
like
survive
we
the
explained.
slasher or to escape the slasher?
Yeah, they're going to be in different part of the movies. They're gonna be in different states, basically. And at one point they're safer, but there's always also going to be moments where they're much more vulnerable, which has to do a little bit with the twist that comes in the movie. So I'm not too sure, like how to properly put that
Well,
in the log line.
I mean, imagine somebody goes to see this movie and they come out of the movie, right? They just saw a paper hat in the theater, right? And it's turned out beautifully, like just like how you wanted it to turn out, right? And they come out of the theater and their friend's like, "Oh, you just saw Paper Hat. What's that about?" "Oh, it's about, two people helping the police." Or, "No, it's about two people escaping a serial killer is trying to kill them," or "It's about two people who are trying to catch a serial killer," right? That, I mean, does it make sense that it's just kind of like the way it's worded, a goal of like working with the police? It feels like not a slasher movie. It feels like maybe a drama or something.
Well, there's an element of thriller to it, but like it's kind of like thriller slasher because there are some brutal deaths. So, the
Mm-hmm.
whole detective storyline, sort of like Saw, right? That where you also have like an agent on the background who's trying to figure out what's going on, and at the same time you have victims who,
Mm-hmm.
usually have something that binds them towards their fate. So why, basically, Jigsaw has chosen them.
So maybe the detective is actually the protagonist.
I mean, you could argue that, but in Saw, also the people that were chained in the
Mm-hmm.
bathroom were also kind of the protagonists in there as
Yeah,
well.
but like in Saw, their goal is to survive, to escape, not to just like collaborate, right? Like with the help the cop. The point is, I think you could probably, you know, like let's say you want to write a story where it's not just really about one person. I mean, this is the easiest thing is if you pick just one person, this is really my protagonist. This person has the most to gain or to lose, and they're going to go through the biggest change in this story. But, maybe you want to make it about two different people, or maybe about three. And, there are movies like that where there may be like, some great Robert Altman movies where it's like little stories that are kind of interwoven, and maybe you can sort of figure out, okay, well, so I have Bob and Jane, and Bob has a whole story arc, and Jane has one, and the detective has one as well. So there are three different sort of stories, and maybe you can kind of work out, three different log lines. Like, so there's the detective story. He's trying to solve this murder. He has to solve a murder before whatever, blah blah blah. The Jane's story. I have to do this before X, Y, or Z, or what exactly she's trying to do. Maybe escape the killer, or just find her friend or something. And maybe there's the other person in the couple that's, we'll just call him Bob. Maybe Bob has his own story arc, right? So you could sort of treat this as though this is actually an ensemble movie. It's not just one person, it's like three different stories, but you can work out a separate outline for each of the three different stories and then figure out how you're going to weave them all together. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe that might be an easier way to approach this one.
That sounds better because I do feel like, at least in the vision that I have, like the two people have equal amount of screen time. Like neither of them are more important than the other because they're both in it together. They're both the former
Hmm.
classmates of this kid that they suspect to be the killer. And like the detective is a very important supporting character because he wants to find out uh, who the killer is, where the killer is, and who's going to be next. And so the three of them are going to try and stop this killer.
Okay, so even in this case where you have three different important characters, maybe still just pick one for the log line, like just for the purpose, like okay, this is because right now, I mean, I could see maybe, um, you know, like two acquaintances have to work with the police. It's not really very interesting the fact that they're acquaintances, right? Maybe two estranged former lovers must work together, but I don't understand what they're working together to do. Like that's not clear. Like I could understand, like, you know, when an adjective protagonist finds a killer, is, you know, hunting down everybody in his classmates, you know, now he's scared. He thinks the killer's after him, right? So he tries to find the killer before he ends up dead, or, you know, like, I mean, you're saying they have to work together with the police, but that just makes it sound easier for them. It makes it sound like their goal is less difficult, less dangerous, because they don't have to, like, even if it does involve the police also helping to solve this crime, like the way you've described it in the log line, it makes it sound easier, right? Does that make sense?
Um, I do get where you're coming from, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like the stakes are like that stakes are very important, and maybe there's a way I could phrase it better, but
Yeah.
I do feel like when it comes to the movie, like there's going to be a midpoint where there's going to be like this false sense of safety that the
Mm-hmm.
characters think they've achieved, and that's basically when the movie gets like on a whole, roller coaster.
Well, I
And
mean,
I don't know if that's something you should
sure.
go away in the premise, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think the movie is not just like the midpoint, right? The movie is like the goal of this character, right? So even if it's two acquaintances, or let's say two former lovers, and you're figuring out, so what is their goal exactly? When you say work together with the police, what does work together with the police mean? Like, what exactly do they have to do?
Some of
And
the events include like that they're gonna visit their former teacher to sort of like see what the patterns are, and they're gonna call up the other classmates to see where they are. They need to know. Basically need to track like who's going to be next on the kill list. Like, is it them? Is it somebody else? Is there a pattern to this?
so, and are they trying to find out who is killing them, or they're just trying to find out who's going to be next, or are they trying to find out
Well,
if they're in danger? Are they trying to avoid getting killed?
they have a pretty big suspicion about who it is, which is why they are visiting the teacher. And the movie opens up with the kid that got bullied, and basically after two people fell victim to him, that's where they started to see, okay, it's related to us, and that's when they get concerned, and they basically go to the police and they say, hey, this is going on. Then the detective that was on these weird paper murder cases, he's suddenly like, okay, bring these guys in, they know something. And that's basically when they go out to try and seek what
Mm-hmm.
exactly is going on.
Like, so the thing is just the work together with the police. I don't understand it. Like, it sounds to me like when you're saying they have to go to. I mean, I understand the police are helping them, but can we maybe describe it in the log line without adding the part about the police? Like, just making it clear, like what are they doing? Like, are they there? You mentioned they go to talk to the professor because they think he's the killer, right? So are they trying to find the killer? Would you say, like, what's their overall goal, and what makes it difficult? Why is it like it should be something that sounds like that's the last person I would expect to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's figuring out how to present it in an enticing
Mm-hmm.
way, um, to just define it in a proper context. But this was just like kind of out of my head. Like, okay, what's kind of the premise of the movie? And that's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
these acquaintances do go on a search with this detective to find the serial killer before he kills anybody else, or
Yeah.
maybe them.
So find a serial killer is a great goal, but just work together with the police it's not a good goal. It's not a strong goal. Does that make sense? And even if maybe there involves working with the police to find him, maybe that's part of their bigger goal of finding the killer, right? Or finding, I don't know, like, or saving their friend. Maybe is that maybe the main goal?
So, um, maybe if I said they have to work instead of they have to work together, they seek aid of a detective to find the serial killer before they end up like their peers.
Well,
I don't think you
Would
should
that be?
mention anything about the detective. I think scrap the detective in the log line altogether.
so
It's just distracting from
like
the
a goal of seeking aid. So imagine this is a movie about two people seeking aid. So like the whole of Act Two, they're trying to, call the police. It doesn't work. Their phone does, all these obstacles that make it harder for them to seek the aid, right? So that could be a movie that's just about somebody trying to call the police. But I think if it's a slasher movie, they're going to be in danger, I imagine, right? And it's sort of like either they're trying to find the slasher, or they're trying to solve it, or they're trying to survive. I mean, I think you want to go with something like that, like life or death stakes, right? Like if you just say like they have to seek aid from the police, it's pretty easy to do, right? It doesn't sound like a very difficult goal.
Yeah, like I said, they seek aid in order to find the killer with this methods. So
So could we just
hopefully should
could
have
this
a nice to find.
could the seeking aid just be part of that? Like their overall goal is find the killer, right? And so within that context, they're trying to find the killer. One of the steps is let's call the police, and they try to get help from the police as part of the overall Act Two goal of like finding the killer. Maybe does that make sense? Or
I mean, yeah, sure. Like, it could work that way. It definitely uh generalize the log line a bit more, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. I would also like to find a way like to emphasize maybe the paper theme in the log line as well, but I'm not too sure on how I will phrase that. Which is that every kill that's been made is like being made in a method of paper, like whether it's like somebody that drowned in paper pulp, or choked in paper on with a paper mache mask, or death by
mm-hmm.
1,000 paper cuts.
Wow, okay, that's kind of cool. Yeah. Okay, so, and Joe has a couple of examples here below.
could, yeah, could I ask a question real quick? With the in regard to the paper theme, uh I get the lack of word in any but why essentially why a paper?
That's the thing. This requires some cultural context, which is even in the title of the movie, because this is actually going to be a Dutch movie. and so there's a children's rhyme called Paper Hat, and that's basically the context with what the kid had been bullied with. And so he's using like parts of that rhyme in order to conduct his serial kill methods. But I don't know whether that is something I should reveal on the log line immediately, uh, or how to
Well,
like
is
bring it organically.
could I ask though then, is it the kid that is getting bullied that is the one that's doing all the killing?
It's actually no. Actually,
Okay,
he
well,
might be. It's actually ambiguous. That's the thing.
okay.
Um,
If it is him, it makes it quite obvious. But if it's not him, it works as a good red herring. So what I'm gonna is you can
yeah,
find a way of just adding. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. I'll let Nacho read the versions of the logline I came up with. But I just think you should scrap the idea of mentioning the police in the logline because it's just distracting from what it is these guys are doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'll say it like it is a red herring actually because they find out that actually the teacher is killing the people, but then by the end they find out through the midpoint. So when they feel safe and they think, oh, the guy's finally being caught, then it turned out it was the teacher all along. And so by the end, it's basically there's like going to be like a closing shot that might imply that actually the kid and the teacher were in it together. But that's up for the viewer to decide.
Mhm. Okay. I think just you need to generalize a bit more. I think don't like, try to find a way of adding in details, but do it in a way where it doesn't distract from the main plot of the story. So like again, that was the reason why I think we're both saying like skip the idea of implementing the police into the logline because not only is it making it seem easier for your main characters, but it also takes any what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, like
It takes
stakes, like tension.
but not only just stakes, but it takes any like it takes the action from them doing the hunting down themselves. It's kind of like here are these characters that we're meant to be following on this really cool journey, but then we're going to watch them simply just put it onto these other people. And that might not be what happens, but that's sort of what's implied in the logline. So
Yeah, so you take away their agency, sort of.
agency is exactly the word I'm looking for. Yeah, it looks like it's taken away that agency. So I reckon the way I've worded it was, I don't know if it's better at all, but I wrote after their former classmates are hunted by a serial killer on the loose, two friends must stop the killer before they turn out like their peers. Or after their former classmates fall victim to a serial killer on the loose, two friends must locate the killer before they meet the same fate. I don't know if that's any better, but it's a little bit just more concise, and it's directly implies that they are the main characters that we are following, and they are directly the people that are trying to do the thing that we will be watching take place in the movie. You see what I'm saying? I don't know if Nacho has any thoughts on it, or if you have any thoughts.
Um, yeah, so I think, I would just kind of go back to the sort of like very, very high level, like what is this really about? So what is your inciting incident? It's like their, classmates get murdered, right? That's what sets them on this journey of this movie. Is that right?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. I would kind of go back to like the high level, just the overview, like what exactly the movie's about and what the inciting incident that sets them on this journey, the catalyst, is their friends, their former classmates get murdered. Is that right?
Yeah. That is sort of the inciting incident that basically puts them on the track.
And so then essentially you know, so then, however you're going to describe these protagonists, they essentially, this is about them finding the killer or stopping the killer, right? So when their former classmates are murdered, or like
Yeah, I think it comes around the second log line that Jotol suggested might become a bit closer to
mhm.
what I probably looking for. Although two friends might still be a little bit too vaguely worded. Maybe that's something that could be expanded upon.
Yeah, finding a bit of irony in that, to like put an ironic adjective before it to make it. I think that's kind of what was like Nacho's been trying to teach us, is like adding some sort of irony to their description implies a more difficult and ironic journey for those characters. I don't know enough about the story at this point to sort of know what that would fit. I don't know what it is about these. That's sort of the thing I think I'm sort of lost with. Is like I know that they were former classmates with the people that are getting killed, but I'm sort of lost as to why are we following these people? Like, why does this story matter to these particular characters? Like, did they have some sort of relationship with this people that fell victim? Were they their friend? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, why these two characters? Why could it not be any other of the kids in that class? You know what I mean? It's like, what stands out about these two characters specifically that makes them
Well,
necessitate
for
us?
me, it's their relationship with each other, basically.
Yeah, but like
That's sort of what.
that's not enough, because where I'm gonna, it's like it has to be related to the killing of some sort to make it actually meaningful. Like their relationship together could make their dichotomy between each other work and make it a lot interesting. But why, like you're sort of saying, like, okay, why these two characters are really interesting because they have an interesting relationship with each other. But okay, now get rid of those two characters and make up two completely new characters who also have a really interesting character, and they're nothing like those other characters. Why is this journey not as suited to those people and is more suited to the characters that you've written? Like, is there some sort of thing that they relate to the actual event that has taken place uh, that makes them the people that we should be following? If you find out what that is, you might be able to add some form of adjective or description about them that implies a difficult journey in the logline.
Yeah, but I feel like being hunted down by a serial killer is already pretty uphill. But
Right,
it's
like where
neither.
I'm getting at is it's like, what makes them any different to anyone else that is being hunted down by this serial killer?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's something to think about.
I think it's definitely
But
something to think about, because otherwise you're minimizing the reason as to why we should be watching these particular characters. Because if they don't have any reason, like essentially, it's still fun to watch someone getting hunted by a serial killer, but it's not meaningful. If you
well,
find a
basically,
reason,
I'll just say like by the end, the teacher is basically saying like how he hated the way those kids had bullied that kid. Like they literally mutilated his face like
sorry,
into like a different shape. That's how bad they bullied him. And so he saw them growing up into terrible people. And then as
right?
the
So,
last
okay,
kid,
the two
he's
friends bullied, are
lecturing. Sorry?
the two people that we're following, did they bully those kids that got killed?
Yeah, they were part of like
That's huge. You should
they were
try to
part
find
of
a way of adding that in.
yeah,
So it's not
but
only their former classmates that got killed; it's also kids that they bullied. Like that makes that journey a lot more interesting as well, because it. See what I'm saying? It's like it's already a
yeah,
little detail that makes that journey a little bit more ironic, because it seems like, you know, or I don't know. It just trying to find something like that, like implying some form of change that needs to take place at the end might be really helpful.
But basically, so they were part of the kids that all those classmates that got killed were kids that used to bully him. And so by the end, the teachers lecturing them became terrible people because they were starting to have an affair on their, boyfriend and family, like showing to that teacher that even now that they've grown up, they're terrible people, and that's how he tries to justify, that they should die.
Yeah, well, I think you should try to find a way of wording that into logline because I think that makes this. Think it accentuates the importance of these characters. And it's almost
you don't want to give away the red herring too easily in the log line either.
Sure, but you also want people to watch it, so I don't know.
Well,
I just
let me ask you,
be that.
Tom, is this something that you've already written and you're just trying to come up with a log line for like marketing purposes, or is this something like you're kind of still formulating what's going to be the story?
It's something that I've the broad strokes are already out there. Like I thought of most of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And is this based on a true story or something, or just like a kind of a nursery rhyme?
It is based on a nursery rhyme. I was just like one day, I was just thinking of that nursery rhyme while I was doing my office work, and then I kind of thought of like how in Nightmare on Elm Street they have that song of 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, and I was like, why not just have a Dutch version uh, with that sort of concept where it gets like, a crazy killer that used to be bullied by like his former classmates. They threw paper planes at him or spitballs, and they deformed his face while singing like the paper hat song, and he or his teacher had taken that so seriously that they were like seeking repentance at years later. And I do think that's a cool story. Personally.
Cool.
It's like a sort of revenge serial killer movie.
Yeah, so maybe something like, after their circle of childhood friends are killed in a series of grotesque paper-themed murders, which I don't know if that conveys more of like almost like a dark comedy tone, because it's hard to say like what would be a paper-themed murder. I mean, it's kind of, I'm not sure if there's a way to really convey that simply, a pair of former bullies must find the killer before they meet the same fate, or a pair of bitter ex-lovers. I mean, so what I would consider is, I guess, first step is just try to really reword the log line in terms of like, what are, if you want to have two protagonists, what are they doing? Like, and even, again, even a lot of movies that have two different protagonists that have equal screen time, a lot of times the log line will often just pick one of them. Because if it's two, we want to really understand like why would we like what's the conflict between these two people, right? Like if the conflict is coming from the like a Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where okay, they are each other's like target or something like that, then it's interesting. Like it kind of works as like a two people protagonist in the just talking about the log line, right? So it would be probably easier if you can pick one of them and really just zero in on one of them. But even if you go with both, you have to consider how can I describe this character or these two characters in a way that sounds like they are going to be the last person I would ever expect to find the killer or to solve the murder, right? So I mean, a pair of bitter ex-lovers, I don't know, maybe they're fighting with each other constantly and it sounds like they're going to have a hard time, or a pair of former bullies. It's still not quite there, but I would suggest to first figure out how to describe the situation, like the goal, like the tangible goal, and you know, and then like what kind of character would have the toughest, longest, most ironic journey in that situation. Hopefully that makes sense.
One of the two has the most ironic journey. Just say that.
Well, it would be easier usually to just pick one and just describe that one character, even if, okay, this is really about two characters, right? But it usually in a log line, it's going to be a little easier to pick one. But even if you're going with both of them, I would try to find a way to describe them that they're going to have, that's going to be like, oh man, I could never, those two are going to like have a really hard time to do this. I can't imagine them doing it, you know, or they're going to have a really ironic journey, you know.
But thanks for the feedback and like a lot of. I will probably integrate some of these suggestions in my log lines. I'm not too sure about incorporating the ironic theme, but we'll see.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and okay, so we have table reads starting up right now. So we can go back to these a little bit later. Let's see. We can just use this channel. Well, I guess we have people joining the other channel. We can just use this channel if you guys want for the table read.
Hey Nacha, I gotta get going real quick. Do you mind just telling me what you think of the logline I sent? You don't have to get into details. I just want to see if you think it's half decent.
Sure. We're actually starting the table reads now, so I can take a look and we can chat more about it after.
Yeah, I kind of gotta get going. That's all.
Okay. So,
I might be able to pop back in later, but I'm not 100% sure at this point.
If I'm reading your log line, I kind of have the question in mind, like, why is the introverted thing important thing to know for the log line?
Yeah, it was in a. We've sort of been fixing it for a little while, but originally the idea was that if I can imply why this particular thing is going to be difficult for this particular character, that's that sort of irony thing that we're trying to sort of fit into it. Because one of the things that makes the again, it's not necessarily implicit in the logline.
hey, Merrickson, how's it going? Can you hear me okay?
Hello?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, I don't know, you cut out for a little while. You pressed something and it like deafened the whole thing for me. I don't know what happened. I think you were switching from general chat to table reads.
Yeah, I moved to the table reads channel. So
Oh,
we
okay.
can, yeah.
Yeah.
So would you like to?
Cindy and Jill and Tom are still there.
Yeah. Would you like to host the table reads today?
Oh, you want me to host it? You
Sure.
need to take off?
No, I'll still be around.
Um, maybe you should host it then, because I just are at my house, so I might have to mute myself. So
Come on, Merrickson. You know, it so far it just looks like us. And yeah, you be the host for once. Give it a shot. We're here to support you.
Yeah.
okay. I mean, if I have to mute myself, maybe Nacho will have to take over. I guess
Sure.
we'll see. Are we gonna give it a few more minutes, or?
We can go ahead and start. Yeah. And, we try to encourage everyone to, whoever is going to have, we may not have any scripts today, I don't know, but whoever is going to share a script to post early. So I'm just going to pop into the other channel to like just see if Joe or Tom are going to be participating. And if you want to go ahead and get the table read started and have people post their scripts if they have a script.
Yeah, does anyone have a Willow or Cindy?
Can you hear?
Hey guys, welcome. I just popped over to, can you hear me okay?
You guys.
Welcome everybody. Sorry, it was just popping back over to see if you guys wanted to join or not, but I think Merrickson is going to be getting us going. Just a moment.
Are you gonna have time to quickly go through that log line,
or? We're actually starting the table reads now, so this is, we're in the other event, but I can take a look afterwards.
All right, no worries.
Never actually heard of table reads before. It's like where you read screenplays, right?
Exactly.
Really a production term. Productions will get together before we get started on production, and they'll have the cast read the script, see what works. But here we're doing it to get an idea of how your scripts read, but the writer might have to change depending on feedback.
Sounds interesting. Although I think I'm gonna sleep. I've had a few classes for today.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll join up some other time.
Sure, Tom.
All right.
All right.
Have a good night.
Have a good one.
Thanks for joining.
Bye bye.
Good night, Tom.
No problem. See ya.
Oh, we lost Tom. It's okay.
Yeah, so if you have a script, go ahead and post it in the table reads channel, the text channel.
Is there an announcement that you need? You have to tag everyone, right?
Yeah. You can see, if you scroll up, you can see the one we did before.
I would post it in the announcements or. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know how to do the. The embedding part.
Okay, I just pasted you could kind of copy paste that.
Oh, okay. In the announcements,
Mhm.
right? Or here
Yes.
in the table reads channel.
Yeah, up to you, either one.
Okay, so it does it on its own. Oh, there's a thing where it says I'm gonna mention it to over 100 people. Just
Yeah.
send now.
Yep. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I didn't do the typewriter thing.
Oh, I guess because that's it's from a different server. I should add it to this one. Sorry.
Oh well, the information's there and they'll get it.
Oh,
So does anyone have any pages today?
Yeah, if you
Just type it in the chat with the title, format, genre, logline, list of characters in the pages. Make sure you get the entire class list. Don't leave out any minors. And then any specific feedback or just general feedback. Yes, or 420, blaze it. I will say we're going to encourage participation in these script readings. So if you're going to be reading some pages, I would encourage you to also play roles in other. It's fun. It just creates camaraderie and it brings the script to life when you participate, breathing life to the characters.
I guess I could probably I got a couple different versions of like the same page. Maybe you could have a look at.
Yeah, if it's rewrite,
Okay.
go for
Cool.
it. Willow, what do you mean by your post here? You say you need a backup plan script.
Let's do it.
Oh, okay. I mean, we could go to Nacho's turtle script, which I really are. You can do up to 5 pages, maybe 6, depending on who signs up.
So yeah, Joe, I'm just to give you some feedback on your log line.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
I'll listen as I do.
yeah, the increasingly immoral tactics kind of. I don't see the connection, I guess, with the increasingly immoral. But
Yeah.
and I guess I would cut art gallery because we can kind of guess this is either an art gallery or a museum or something. Like I think it's just like extra words.
Okay.
Maybe like when his favorite painting goes missing, a security guard must track it down to clear his name or something.
Yeah, okay.
Is he trying to clear
A
his
little
name?
play around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it was a little detail that I came up with just recently, but I think part of the reason is because I feel like it'll just add another another reason for this to take place, essentially. Like, because one of the problems I kept coming down to was that the stakes of what happens as a result of him not doing anything actually are, and I thought that it didn't really work as well if I didn't have that there. So I thought that it works. I thought that it adds like a little bit of. It's hard to explain without going into like a full depth, but I know what you mean. I'll have a little play around with it. I think one of the reasons it also doesn't work is because the words they've chosen don't seem to connect to one another. It's like, how does his introversion, how does that have any connection to him taking an immoral action? And so it's like, again, I got to try to find how I can connect those two things more specifically to where it actually is in,
Mm-hmm.
whether not irony, but the actual the excitement of the movie is implicit in the log line. So yeah, I'll have a little play around with it.
And the inciting incident seems to be that the painting goes missing rather than him being accused, right?
Right, exactly, yeah. So it's not even that the fact like him being accused is more. Again, it's one of those things where it's like the difficulty of whether or not to actually add it, because it's not something I want to be. It doesn't necessarily need to be a large focus, because really it's more. It's not necessarily that he's accused; it's more the fact that they suspect. There's no accusation; it's more of a suspicion. So yeah, like he hasn't been like, you know, you did this. We've got proof. Blah blah blah. It's more like, well, like it must be him because he's the only one really that cares about this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have a little think about it. I'll quickly, if no one else has got any pages, I may as well have. It's that same couple pages I think I've given before, but I just wanted to see actually. I'm struggling as to. I think I'm a bit of an extremist in terms of like what I do. Like I've been writing my story a certain way for a while. It was really, really, really detailed, but probably too much. And then now I've also tried to like simplify it. What I found is that